Today's guest is a former professional road cyclist. He's an entrepreneur and a business owner, and now is one of the finest ultra mountain runners in the world. We can't wait to dig into this incredible guest's remarkable sporting journey. Welcome to Just Ride, Christian Meier. How are you? Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to get into the ultra running. We're going to get into the Tour de France and all these other incredible feats that you've achieved in this amazing career of yours.
Sure.
But let's start right at the beginning, because me and Eliot know that at the start, you were a downhill racer, a mountain bike downhiller, correct?
I was a mountain biker and a downhiller, mostly. Yeah, I started with downhill. It was amazing. Interestingly, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, rural Canada, and, farming and forestry, that's all we had. And one day, I went into town.
Went off
the
bar. Wow. Big day out, headed into town.
Yeah, I was at this newsstand in the mall, and there was this mountain bike magazine, and I looked at the cover, and it was just this most amazing bike I've ever seen in my life.
A downhill bike?
Yeah.
Something from outer space.
With this big suspension, and it was like a dirt bike without the motor, and I was just thinking
yeah,
that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I just bought the magazine, and I was just sitting at home for weeks, just flipping through page after page, rereading and rereading.
How old were you at this point, Christian?
I was 15.
When was this? Oh, yeah.
15. And then I was like, I got to do this. This looks so epic. So I was saving all my pennies. But I was actually too young to race downhill at that time, but still bought my first bike, and I would go, and then I was racing cross country on the side, doing whatever I could. And then the moment I got the license, I was just all in.
Yeah.
And what did you race? Canadian nationals and stuff then? Or?
Yeah, so we had the Atlantic Canadian series, but we'd go up to Quebec quite a bit because they had races around
East Coast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Canadian, yeah.
Yeah, and that was in the time of Canadian free ride.
Yeah. West Coast was just starting, the whole free ride scene and all that. And actually the big thing where I lived, because we had a really small community, these downhill guys, and some of them were really good national level racers. The big thing was going out west, and they would go, going out west, and they would go and they'd work at Deep Cove Bike Shop, which was one of the first
Totally.
epic bike shops.
Yeah.
And then they would go out there, they'd spend a summer working and just doing the whole free ride thing, and then you get these sort of messages back home.
You're right. You wouldn't believe what they have out there.
Yeah. And they'd send you photos, or you'd get this stuff of this new suspension or whatever, these epic bikes, and bring stuff back, and it was it was a pretty cool time. Yeah.
It was, wasn't it? The early technological advances were so interesting in downhill as well.
Yeah.
It was a mad time, the early start of downhill racing. Yeah.
And Christian, it is interesting, like Rob was saying in the intro, you do so many things now. When you introduce yourself, how do you introduce yourself now, right? Cyclist, entrepreneur,
downhiller.
Yeah. The core of your personality.
Always start with that. Good question. I guess I've not really thought about that. I don't really introduce myself so much to people.
Hey, I'm Christian. What's up?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's true. We have a lot of stuff going on, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of difficult to identify as kind of one thing, really.
Yeah.
And kind of, to be honest, I try to kind of move away from trying to identify as one thing or attach to one thing, because there's been moments where, to me, I've actually struggled with that.
Yeah.
There was a moment where when I moved to trail running and I left cycling for probably more personal reasons,
Mm-hmm.
I really struggled with that identity crisis of I'm a cyclist. People only know me as a cyclist, and if I'm not a cyclist, what am I? And all this sort of stuff, and it was just kind of identity crisis.
Yeah,
for sure.
So
yeah.
after that, I was
felt
you know what? I'm just gonna do what I love to do, whatever that is, and that's it.
It's so interesting. We've had this conversation a couple times on this podcast about this transition, and I think that you embody this so much because you've made transitions, but you've also made transitions to another peak, if you will. And it is so interesting, that process that you go through of, I only know myself as this. Like you said, other people only know me as this, but I'm so much more than that. Do you have a favorite phase of your career?
That's a good question. I think transitioning to different sports and different things. Like I've always had a lot of interests in my life, and that's kind of been a theme since I was a child. Like when I was young and someone asked me, oh, what do you want to do? My answer is I want to do everything.
Right.
I don't know. Like everything was like interesting to me.
Yeah.
And
it's not enough time almost, is
yeah,
there?
exactly. And like even during cycling at the end, I mean, I loved cycling and I love the professional side and I love the racing and I love, for whatever reason, I feel most natural doing physical things. That's kind of always been my thing. But when, towards the end of my career, one of the reasons I left professional cycling was because we also had these businesses that we'd started, which were in coffee. And I'd become really enamored with everything to do with specialty coffee.
Had you?
And I was getting so into it, like, you know, scouring the forums about like how to brew, like, you know, all the nerdy
Went down
stuff.
the rabbit hole.
Like I do that in everything. It's like a tendency. It's a good and a bad thing. But like, and then I was like, oh, wow, this is super cool. And we have these businesses. And yeah, I've been racing for a long time. It's cool. But like, I kind of really am into this right now.
Right.
Not that I don't love cycling anymore, but I was willing to give up the professional life of cycling to follow this new interest that just kind of felt natural.
Even though it wasn't a physical one.
No, because to me, the thing was I could leave professional cycling, but I was always going to ride.
So
Right,
you
because
weren't leaving cycling, I suppose.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Like to me, the racing was always kind of a byproduct of just wanting to ride my bike. It was like the way that I could, being a professional, just allowed me to ride my bike every day. Like for me, training was my favorite thing.
Really?
And even now, like even in running, training is my favorite thing. Like I like racing because racing is, it's a goal. It's something you build towards, and it's a moment where you can. It's stress. Yeah. But it's a moment to where you can kind of see if everything you've done in training has become
it's
fruitful.
It's the feedback mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so tell us about like how you went from riding downhill bikes on the east coast of Canada to being one of the best domestiques in cycling.
So when I started and I got into downhill and mountain biking and the whole thing growing up in rural Canada, it was like, loved it. And I loved all cycling at that point. You know, I was doing downhill, cross country, cyclocross. I was riding on the track, like anything I could do. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And
you had busy parents then.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
another thing because like to me, when I was growing up, cycling was my independence.
Well, that's
Totally.
right. And it was me because before you get car keys, you can get on a bike and go where you want.
Totally.
That was totally it. Like that was my thing. Like I can go explore. I can see the world. I don't know.
You can with your legs.
I
was limited I was on a limited run down to Henley on Thames for a donut and back.
3 blocks away.
Exactly. So that was like, it was actually my thing. And in the beginning, I didn't like really let my parents come to like my biking stuff.
Did you not?
No, because it was like, there was a small club that I joined in my town, and I had like the group of people there that I would go to races with and stuff. But like, it was really just for me, and so it was a bit different. And like, and then, you know, just loving all aspects of the sport and everything. I was like, okay, I just want to ride my bike every single day. So what am I going to do? And I thought, well, the best thing I can do is become a professional athlete, right? Then I get paid to ride my bike. And I thought, okay, what's the best way to do that? Like just sort of logically putting some steps. I should become a professional road cyclist because road cycling, I have the best opportunity to make like a good salary, to have a living wage, to like maybe move to Europe, to do all those sort of things.
I just want to point out at this point though, that downhill and being an endurance athlete, in my opinion, like it's both cycling, but only just. Like they couldn't be further away. You couldn't have taken a much bigger step from where you were into what you did, really. I would say.
One thing to remember where I grew up is we had in our town a small ski hill where we hosted a Canada Cup downhill race. That was around 25 kilometers from my house. So I had to ride from my house into town, and then I had to ride from town out to the ski hill.
Not on the downhill bike.
On the downhill bike. That was the only way I could get there. So it would be like, it would take me like 3 hours to ride there.
God.
And then...
You were warmed up.
And then like you're like all my gear on, right? So
Yeah.
riding. And I'd ride my downhill bike to school. And I was like, it was like 20 kilometers.
No, what, every day?
Not every day.
Now
Once-
this is starting to make sense. Where the
We're
fitness
getting there
came
now.
from.
I'm glad we dug into this.
But if I wanted to go downhilling like after school or something, I'd have to get my bike there. So I'd ride my bike to school. And then after school, I'd ride out to the ski hill. And then I would do runs, but then also, and this is mental thinking about it back, obviously single chain ring, like massive thing.
Yeah.
And then I would ride up the ski hill
On the downhill bike.
on the downhill bike.
Imagine
Like,
seeing like your
my
competition.
God.
You're like your dad is like, well, look at Christian. He's riding from his house. He's riding up the hill. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
And-
exactly.
But like, to me, it was just totally normal because it was like, this is the thing I love to do. Like, I want to go and do runs. The only way I'm going to get there is I'm going to ride my bike out there. And it's just like, okay, well, I just ride my bike out there. Like, it just seemed like totally logical thing to do.
Yeah, and
I don't
times
know.
have changed so much.
Yeah, sure.
But in 1995 at Cap Dye, when it was probably the first time I went there for my World Cup, probably don't remember, Jason McCrory was one of the early British downhillers, an incredible athlete like yourself. And at Cap Dye, his warm-up in the morning was to ride from the bottom to the top of the World Cup track on his downhill bike. And I couldn't, like, it was it just blew my mind, but that's blown my mind
So
equally. But, you know, if you're in shape.
I'd go out there, spend like hours getting out there. And I could only get in like 3 runs, right? Because it was like...
It's like an hour and a half
Yeah,
hard
4 hours
labour to get to the
out
top.
and back. And I was just like, do 3 runs and I'm like, okay, go home. But the thing is, I'd go out there by myself. And I remember this one time I like totally binned it. Like there's nobody at the ski hill. Like it's not open.
Right.
Like the run is there. And once I just binned it and I'm like just out there, I'm really realizing like, I should be pretty careful. Like I'm out there, just got this brand new helmet. And
You were totally independent then. It was something you really did on your own.
Yeah. And I had this Bell, I got this new Bell full face helmet that was like all chrome and shiny.
Yeah.
And I got that and like the first run I binned it and like scratched the whole thing. And it was pretty hard because then when I got home it was like you couldn't really hide it from your parents that you'd binned it because your helmet's just like destroyed on the side and they're like, what did you do? I'm like, and then, So from there, long story short, decided
You found a bike that pedaled a bit better.
Exactly. Decided that road cycling was going to be how I should do it. And I just thought, well, what am I going to do? What's the best? How am I going to get there? And I decided I should probably go to Belgium because road cycling is massive in Belgium. You know, it's like a religion. So
Were you at a decent kind of? Did you know that you'd be successful? Were you at a certain level of road cycling at this point? Like, because it's a big move, isn't it? Just to go to Europe and go right.
I had success like locally, but
nothing concrete. It was a real chance you took.
Yeah, I mean, but
looking back,
not a chance. I mean, to me, it just felt like this is just what you need to do. Like, I just kind of felt like when I was young, I told my parents, okay, I'm going to become a professional cyclist. And I felt like I kind of chose that, like, oh, I'm going to become a bricklayer or like any job. You know, to me, it's like, okay, if you want to do a job, there's also a logical trajectory, which is like, okay, I'll go to school, I'll learn this trade, I'll do this thing.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, well, I can do the same with cycling. All I have to do is figure out what the steps are and then
move to Belgium. But when you put it like that, it's actually, you're right, it's actually exactly what you need to do.
And I didn't think like, I'm taking a chance. I mean, I was still in high school, so I just took like my last half year of school off. Went to Belgium, did a couple of correspondence courses, and then went to Belgium for like 3 months. And it was totally wild. I mean, I had no idea what I was going to do when I got there. And then like, first day out riding, I randomly saw these guys who were like loading some bikes on top of their car in this parking lot. And it's like my second ride there. And these were like,
you literally flew to Belgium, rented somewhere, and then was like, better start cycling.
I had an aunt and uncle that lived there, so I was able to move in with them.
But you literally got there and went pedaling. Yeah. Just decided to start riding and see what happened.
Yeah. And
mad.
There's no GPSs. Like this is like put it in the old Garmin and bugger off. It was like, I would go with a map. So I'd get a map in my pocket and I would just like ride one direction for like, I don't know, 2 hours, look on the map where I was, and then like plot a route home. And on the second day, I saw these 2 guys and they were like loading bikes on the roof of their car. So I went and I asked them like, you know, I'm new here. I spoke French and all that. And it was like the French part of Belgium. So I felt quite comfortable. And I was like, what's the best way direction generally to go riding? You know, we're like just on the south of Brussels. And they're like, oh yeah, you should go and head out this way towards Leuven or whatever. I'm like, oh cool. And then they started asking me like, oh, what are you doing here? Like, I'm like 17. I was like this kid riding around the streets in the middle of the day.
Flew in to be a pro.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any tips?
Yeah. And so I started talking to these guys. They're like, oh, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here cycling, blah, blah, blah. I'm from Canada. And they're like, oh, cool. And they're like, so these two guys, they ran Scott USA, which was Scott USA
Totally.
at the time.
They did. Is that right?
Wow.
So Scott USA had this like Benelux / European warehouse just outside of it was like 10, 15K from where I was living. And they said, oh, we have this junior team, like all juniors. You want to come and like train with us? We do training rides Tuesdays and Thursdays. You should come along if you want. And just so I was like, oh, sweet. So I went and turned up, and then like shortly after, they signed me up on this team.
Yeah.
So now I'm in this like Belgian team.
Well, what was, I feel like that moment is really interesting in like an athlete's life where it was like that first moment of feedback where you're like, I'm here, here's like the first step, and you rode with them. Were you able to, I'm almost assuming that you were probably even more fit than they were, able to keep up, or?
Yeah, I was able to keep up, but they're super fit. Like,
yeah, sure.
I mean, they were fitter than I was.
Yeah.
I mean, these are, in Europe, these kids are starting when they're like 5 years old.
Right,
It's like every father's dream to have a professional cyclist son in Belgium, you know? So they were all like super fit, and the racing was super high. But the guys on the team, they loved it because, we once did this training camp. We did this training camp on the coast of Belgium, right? So we're talking like an hour's drive. Uh-huh. And you're with all these young guys who are 17, 18 years old. And literally, like, their moms were coming to, like, because they were getting homesick. It's like,
an hour away.
It's like a 3-day training camp on the coast, And then, the guys who manage the team loved it. Like, look at this guy, he's from Canada. It's like 5,000K away, and he's here. So they're like, they love it, because they was kind of like having, dealing with these little kind of mama's boys. But that was super cool. And, like, an amazing experience. Then I went home, and I'd, really jumped the level, and that kind of perpetuated things. But then it was a really long journey. Like, it was super hard because
to get to being a pro?
Yeah, I mean, when I went back, I got to do the Junior Worlds that year and stuff. And the next year, you go to under 23s. And I remember the under 23s, kind of my first year under 23, we did a national team project. We went to Europe and we raced a national team, and we just got annihilated. Like,
did you?
Beyond. Like, I didn't finish a single race in the peloton.
Oh no.
Right?
Honestly.
Like, dropped every single day. Like 5K in the races, just like echelon front.
After 5K you'd be dropped.
And
the pace was that insane?
It was like next level.
Wow.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
It was next level.
Wow.
And we were 11 guys on that trip. And when we went back, everyone quit cycling.
I was about to.
They all gave up. They're like, "This is not.
Yeah.
I don't have it. Like, I'm not going to be a pro in Europe. This is like beyond me."
It literally blew their minds. Just how far ahead you were.
Crushed their spirits.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like, "Well, still hope, right?" But
says the man who used to ride his downhill bike training.
But to me, it was this logical thing of, okay, I came in here to something totally new, totally new level. Now I've gained some experience. I understand what it'll take. You have power meters, it's kind of wattage you need to produce. And to me, it just became a logical step of, okay, how do I get to being able to do those numbers? Training, I need to do this. And just kept grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. And then like 2 years later, went back to Europe and then happened to be close to one of the best under 23 riders in the world.
Did you?
And
did you really, after training in Canada on your own again, were you?
Yeah. And it was just like...
Wow. How did that feel to you to go back? You were at one level, 2 years at home in Canada, away from Belgium, away from all that, and then to go back like that. That must have felt pretty amazing, didn't it?
It was amazing. And
was it unexpected?
Yes and no, because you can also, again, it's logical. Like, you
train, know the numbers.
You see the improvements, you see things are happening, and like, you get feedback. I mean, I was also racing on a team. We were racing all over South America and stuff. So you see yourself growing as an athlete and as a person. But it's just that, like, keeping going, Like, to me, there was not really any other option. Like it was just something.
Not if you got your heart set on being a pro road cyclist. That's what you got to do, right?
But it's also that I just didn't like I didn't have. It never felt like an end all be all. Like I'll make it, or I had this pressure to make it, or for some reason I just had this like. I'll be there. It might take me longer than the kids who race in Europe because they have more. It's a deeper field. Development is quicker. Like it takes us longer because different levels. But I just kind of thought, well, they're all people. Like
they're only human beings.
Yeah. I mean, what's going to separate them from me other than the want to go and do that?
Was there a moment that you kind of looked back and you're like, okay, I've made it. Like I know you went to the tour in 2014 and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the moment you sign, so in cycling, in professional cycling, we generally have what's called stagiaire, which is like a kind of a tryout, right? So a team will take you on, usually in the second half of the season, and then you do that part of the season with the team race, and it's kind of a tryout, and then usually you get a contract with a professional team.
Is that how it goes? Yeah.
So in 2008, I did a stagiaire with Garmin Slipstream, which is now kind of the organization of EF Pro Cycling. And I remember going, and it's such a funny story because, I fly over to Europe. I had some success now in North America and stuff, and had some good results. And
were you one of the big dogs from North America at this point? Would you say?
Ish, not one of the biggest, but probably I was relatively young still, so potential-wise maybe. But I remember going over, and I fly to Spain, right? I fly to Spain because Slipstream have their bases in Girona. So I get picked up by the director and team car, everything at the airport. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, we're driving to Girona. Halfway there, car breaks down, and it's so funny because like, luckily, for some reason, this tow truck's going by, whatever. So he picks us up, but the tow truck only has got one seat in the front, right? So here I am in the car on the back seat all the way back because it's illegal to have someone in there. I'm just like laying like this in the back of the car. I'm like, yep, this is awesome.
I've made it.
It was so funny.
I thought you were going to tell us that you just push the car, like training.
I was like, I've made it.
You're there.
And then you get there and they take you to the hotel and you're like, they've got a new bike for you. And it's like, even has carbon wheels for training. And then like a suitcase you open up and there's all this gear and stuff.
Totally.
Like, oh, this is epic. And then so I got signed on a contract, and it was like minimum wage, everything. I was like, even with minimum wage, it's like, I can't believe they're paying me this much money to ride my bike.
I pulled one over on them.
Exactly. And that was kind of, for me, that moment.
Sure.
Like looking back, looking back now after having done everything is like, those are those moments where you're like kind of just so happy, right? And it's so emotional.
They're unforgettable moments as a kid, isn't they? Almost
it's so epic. As a young person, just to be like, this is it. This is it. And then you go through a period of a lot of years where, it becomes a little bit more work and you grind and that sort of thing. And then there's like, a lot of special moments, like doing the Tour de France was a really special moment for me because another great story. you sort of get a theme in this where there's a lot of really, I don't know, unexpected things lead. So for myself, I was domestique. I always wanted to be a domestique. I never really wanted to be a winner.
You were happy to be a domestique?
It's like my favorite thing because I would just go, because I love training and I love just like pushing and like working. So like riding on the front all day was like my dream. Like, this is it.
Who is this dude?
Just like on the bar, just cruising, pulling. And then at the end, when it's all like stressy and stuff, you can just kind of sit up and.
I've done my job.
Oh, man, I loved like my favorite.
That
like
is
I was pretty good like on hilly stuff because I was small. But my favorite was riding for sprinters because you could just ride in the front all day, pulling for the sprint.
Right.
Is that what you do all day? That was your role in that tour?
And Christian, we've talked to a couple of we talked to G, we talked to Luke Rowe. And they, Luke was the team captain, Garrett was, one of the people that was winning the tour. And so can you give us a quick overview, like in your words of like, what is the role of a domestique?
Sure. Well, domestique is essentially you do as much as possible so that your team leader does as little as possible.
You sacrifice yourself.
Yeah.
Daily. But you love it, so it's fine.
I love it. But, I mean, it's a very fulfilling role because you really feel you have the opportunity to be a part of something quite big. Right? Like pulling off a really big victory is something that's really amazing. And cycling is very much a team sport, right? And sometimes it's not as prevalent from the outside. I mean, if you're watching, people understand it's a team sport.
Yeah.
But until you're there, you really understand how important it is to have a solid team around you.
Go into that a little bit more. Like explain, because we like you said, like intellectually I know it is, but what does that mean?
So generally, depending on if you're riding for a sprinter or a climber or a GC rider, but generally it's sort of the most basic stuff is getting bottles, right? So we go back to the team car, fill up our jersey with water bottles, bring them up for everybody, right? So all these things cost you energy because you have to drop back and then you have to ride back up and catch back up and do all the back and forth. Then you have the sheltering a rider, right? So you ride, for example, if you've got a little bit of crosswind or even if you're just riding in the front, you ride in front of that person so that you essentially breaking the wind. So
shield them as much as you can.
possible. So it's about 20 to 30% less energy sitting in a wheel than riding in the wheel. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one of the roles, making sure that your leader is always in a good position in the peloton. So that might mean that you have to take them up so they follow your wheel. Again, saving them the energy so they don't have to expend that to do that. Depending on different types of leaders, like to sit in different parts of the peloton, and the way they move in the peloton. Like some are really good at moving in the peloton, which is you have to move between people.
Right.
Others like to move on the outside.
Is that right? It's so intricate and
It's
deep.
so intricate. Each leader is very different. So as a good domestique, you kind of have to understand how they would like to ride. Because if you just ride up the side, and they usually go up the middle, they're not going to follow you because that's not how they're, like, you want them to feel as natural as possible in their...
You're an extension of them almost, aren't you?
Essentially. I mean, that's why a lot of times you ride a lot for a specific leader. Like, because once you have the same sort of ideas and understandings, it becomes more seamless, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But then also if they want to stop for a piss, you stop with them.
Right.
And you bring them back up. You know, if they have a flat tire, you stop with them. And you either, one, you can give them your wheel straight away, depending on the situation. Like if it's a quite stressful moment, it might be quicker for you just to give them your wheel and they carry on.
Gotcha, yeah.
Or you wait for the car, bring them back up. Like essentially you ride with them all the time.
Yeah.
The whole day.
And those top riders probably would have started in that role as a domestique themselves, or not? Is it kind of the way through a pro team to the top of it?
When I started, yes. Nowadays, no. Nowadays, you got you got young guys coming in at 21 years old winning the Tour de France.
That's
like,
right.
It's a different.
It's changed so much.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's changed so much. It's changed. Like when I started, like no matter who you were, you started like your first 2 years was just getting bottles and doing stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was also those old school days where like on a sprint stage, you'd have like 3 guys go up the road. You give them like 15-minute gap. Right, and then you'd start riding, and it was just like more chill.
Yeah.
Now, like you watch the Giro, I mean, you'll see like even on a long day, there was a stage the other day. It was a totally flat day, sprint day, super long, 215 kilometers. Like 2 guys go up the road, and they give them like 2 minutes gap. You know, that's nothing.
Right.
Like, you could easily let those guys get 15, 16 minutes, and you could ride them back by the end, no problem.
Interesting.
Is that right?
But it's just the intensity is really.
That's what
up.
Garrett was saying, was like, you know, the young kids, especially like even at the front of the peloton, they're like fighting. That, you know, there's elbows getting thrown and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's totally changed. And that's also was kind of one of the reasons that a little factor in the end why I decided, okay, maybe it's time to move on and do something else with my life.
It's mad, isn't it, how we've seen. It feels to me like we've definitely seen mountain bike get younger. And when you say about, you know, the riders coming through now and peaking, Vingegaard, Pogacar, and I can't imagine when you said about they don't come in and do the domestique, like Tom Pidcock, we had him on. I mean, he's going to be pushing for a Tour win maybe this year soon, I imagine. But I guess then he never really had to come through the ranks, someone of his talent, right? And that's what's changed, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
the
changed
young riders at 20 years old can definitely be the best in the world in these disciplines now.
100%.
Yeah, it's mad.
And you definitely notice sort of, you know, as most sports professionalize, you know, and more information becomes available and a lot of things change. Like younger riders are already much more professional in how they're preparing when they're juniors.
Right. Totally.
So that whole thing is just like, it's pushing and starting younger.
Yeah.
But it will be really interesting to see like how those riders progress, because
and how long their careers last.
Exactly.
Yeah. Will they still be winning
like,
at 38 like Nino Schurter is?
Right.
Exactly. Or does that just get pushed forward?
Yeah, well, I would love for you to, I've heard you like say some things about this, and maybe you can kind of tie it into you transitioning out of cycling, but the like burnout, and then the sacrifice that you have to make as a professional athlete, and kind of that balance between, do I give everything, right? Like, do I make this my entire life the only thing I think about, which then maybe leads to that. Like if I've been doing that since I'm 9 years old, what do I feel like at 25?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. For me personally, I felt sometimes a little bit different, because a lot of people always talked about, and still talk about, you know, it's very normal, the things that you sacrifice as an athlete. And there's a lot of sacrifice involved, and it's very difficult to do all the sacrifices. I kind of never really felt that way.
Sure.
Because I've kind of thought like, I don't know, I think this is the greatest thing ever. Like this is what I'm doing every day.
Yeah.
Why not?
And I was, for whatever reason, I was so into it, and it was so much what I love to do. It doesn't really feel like a sacrifice. Because a lot of the other stuff
That's what you do in life.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess some people view it different. Like some people come, like I came to cycling because I love just cycling so much, but other people come because they got into it, they saw success, and then it becomes something that they can do, and they could make a good living as a professional athlete or whatever.
Yeah.
But then they also really loved the other stuff. Like maybe that was going out with mates, partying, or doing stuff. And yes, that kind of stuff you can't really do. But I never really did that anyway, so it never felt like a sacrifice.
No, I got you. Yeah.
So for me, like the burnout thing was less around sacrificing other things in my life, because I was super happy just doing that thing. And like even now, I'm super happy just running or just doing a sport. Like to me, that's kind of my number one thing. But burnout definitely happens from other things, like the intensity of the sport. You know, you have to be so switched on in the racing. It's mentally fatiguing, probably more so than physically now, because like,
is it really on the same level?
All day, you're just like fighting.
Concentrating.
Like they were saying, you know, it's like, you got to be in the front, you got to be in the front. All the young guys are just like, you always have to be switched on. So you just mentally at the end of the day are shattered. I think physically it's probably the same, but the mental aspect is so much higher.
Wow.
And you know, I think a lot of teams now with performance and stuff are pushing those boundaries a lot more to gain that last 1 or 0.5%.
Totally.
Where it's like, you know,
we're into the
nutrition
details.
and like, you know, let's get your app out. We're tracking your food.
Marginal
doing,
gains, like.
And I can see how that starts to lead to some burnout, not because of the sport, but just because of like, again, it's a mental drain of like doing this all the single time.
Yeah, and it is.
And I was always a bit like, yeah, if I want a piece of cake, I'm gonna have it. Or if I really wanted to have a beer or something, I would have it.
Yeah.
And I never really pushed that far down, because I don't know if it's maybe that last 0.5% for winning the tour, but like it's I don't know if it's that necessary all the time.
So what was it for you that made you want to transition into the next phase?
My phase out of cycling was we'd opened our businesses.
Yeah.
In Girona.
In Girona. We had we had opened 3 businesses in 2 years while I was still racing. And then I just kind of got to the point where I was like, I really love these businesses. I really like, I've got this big interest in coffee. I love the businesses. I love how that's going. And I always had this thing like in sport or life where I want to have the feeling like I'm growing, like I'm doing something.
Well, I do,
like,
yeah.
I definitely,
Absolutely,
I don't like feeling stagnated or I'm just
No, I'm totally with you on that. Yeah, you've got to keep
groundhog
moving.
mode,
It's
you know,
crucial.
like-
Otherwise, yeah.
And I got to a point where after I'd done the tour, and doing the tour for me was kind of an exceptional thing. Like, I was a kind of rider where I wasn't guaranteed to do it every year. Like a lot of tour teams on teams are like, okay, you've got your 8 to 9 riders, or a group of 10 or 11
Right.
who are like going for the tour most years.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't that guy, but I knew if everything came together, you know, one year I could be that guy. So, you know, for me, a lot of times, like I could just be at that very top in like peaks.
Yeah,
You know, like,
gotcha.
I wasn't the guy
Yeah.
who was up there all the time, but like I had enough, and when things came together, I could be up there. You know,
Totally.
And I knew, okay, I could get there, and really funny, I think I somehow kind of manifested it because I kind of, like one year they're like, okay, this year everything goes well, you're like they usually nominate kind of 11 guys, and then that gets whittled down to like, it used to be 9, I think now it's 8 at Grand Tours. The 9 guys, because you always had 2 reserves. So like you're in the 11, everything goes really well, you could be on the team. And then that whole sort of winter, spring with my coach who was from the team, I always jokingly said, like, it's all in for the tour. You know, if we ever had any decision on training or racing or something, I was like, oh, what's the best for the tour? You know?
Right.
It was always
Yeah,
like kind
yeah.
of joking with him. And then yeah, it was so funny because he's also a really funny guy. So we were kind of joking. I was like, oh, just whatever's best for the tour, mate.
Yeah.
And then
The tour is so much above everything else, is it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then so it comes close to the tour, and then at the Dauphiné, which is usually the last big race.
Last
Dauphiné
test, innit, for the tour?
Or Tour de Suisse, one of the two. They kind of select the team. I had a good Dauphiné, but at the end of the Dauphiné, the team said, look, this year you're going to be first reserve. You've not made the team, but you're first reserve, right? So if anything happens to one of those 9 guys, you'll be the first guy that comes in. Okay, so then I go back to Canada to do my national championships, which is like, the nationals finish about a week or so before the Tour de France starts. So I do my nationals, have a good race, all good. And now I'm like, okay, it's a week before the tour.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go now. You know, like
Right.
this was the year that started in the UK. And so my wife and I went to Las Vegas
As you do.
on a holiday. So anyway, we go to Las Vegas. We're there like the second day. I wake up in the morning and I've got an email from the team that say, well, it says that year, unfortunately, Daryl Impey, who was doing the Tour de France, South African rider on our team, he had a problem with a positive test, which ended up being proven a contaminated supplement, and he didn't serve any time, but like it meant he couldn't do the tour.
Right.
So normally I was the first reserve, so I should have been going.
You'd been up all night dancing in Las Vegas.
And so, but
We might get to the bottom of it.
but then the director called me. He's like, okay, we're taking Simon Yates, right? Because he's already in the UK and the race starts in like 2 days.
Right.
So
He's not in Las Vegas.
so we're gonna take him. He's already here. We're entertaining a new sponsor, potentially an English sponsor. So it'd be really great for the tour. And I was like, sure, of course. I'm not, whatever. Like I'm here.
Yeah.
I know I'm like on the other continent.
Yeah.
I'm in Vegas. He's right there. It makes
Yeah.
sense. You take him. Like I wasn't like.
You were chilling.
Yeah, I wasn't super disappointed or anything. And then, like, just as he's about to hang up the phone, he says, Michael Matthews did an easy ride this morning before getting on the plane to the UK, and he crashed. We don't know how bad it is yet, because he's not here yet, but you might still have to come.
What?
I was like, okay. And that was, like, the end of the call. And I was like, it starts in like 3 days or 2 days.
Should I come or?
He's like, I'll ring you back in a bit. So when he gets to the UK, and then I get another phone call from him, and he's like, yeah, it's like looking a bit hit and miss, like that he can start.
My God.
If you can come over, and like, you know, it's 50-50 chance that you'll start because we don't totally know yet, but you can come over if you want. And I was like, yeah, just book me a return flight.
How's the wife on this?
Oh, she's super chill.
Was she really? Didn't mind you just
Yeah,
blowing the holiday up?
She's the best in the world.
Oh, amazing.
And so I fly over the UK.
Did you?
And, he's got bandages like up to here.
Looks like a mummy.
Yeah. And so you're starting the tour. And on the way from the airport, because, the tour is a big thing. You have to do like medical controls. You have to do everything from the start. They picked me up at the airport, took me straight to like this hospital where I do my medical control, blood tests, all this sort of thing.
Holy cow.
And then, I didn't even have, my accreditation didn't have my photo on it. I didn't get to do the team presentation.
No.
I just arrived and and
way.
pretty much the next day started the tour.
My God!
And I was like, wild. And I'm like, it was so funny too, because you have this like, preconceived ideas of like, everything needs to be perfect.
This is how it's going to go. It's almost like a wedding day or something like that.
I've been like just eating and like not doing any exercise for like 5 days before.
Was that good though? Because you'd be rested
amazing.
up,
Yeah.
right?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
But the moment that they said, "Oh, you're coming over," I went like down to the gym in our hotel, right? And I know, like, I was just in my like civvies, right? And I'm just get on this exercise bike.
Oh my God!
I'm just gonna spin it out for a few minutes here,
Just to ease the guilt.
just to ease
Just
the-
to ease the feeling.
You see this,
Oh
this
my
random dude just going wild and that's
And then there's a guy beside me in the treadmill. He's like looking at me. He's like, "It's not the Tour de France." I'm like, maybe not. Who knows?
yeah.
Might be tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Oh, so
That
you were going
is
at it.
So
Yeah, it was-
cool.
It was smoking. The machine was smoking.
That is so
I mean, a lot
cool.
of things in my career end up being just like things happen.
That
and, like
is
you got there
wild.
and you got to do the tour, and it was like the most amazing experience.
Yeah.
And like I had a great tour, felt good the whole time.
Finished it.
Won
Yeah.
Champs Elysees.
You did it.
That
was
is
epic.
so
Was it amazing?
wild.
Is it as
Yeah.
good as they say to ride down the Champs Elysees that first time?
Not the first time. Well, the first time's pretty amazing, but
Like, because
Like
you
the
finished
finish.
the tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When
So
you-
you've made, you've
when you
completed
do
the
that
tour.
lap and it's like sunset, you're kind
Yeah.
of doing your lap with the team and you're riding, like it's pretty special.
That
Is
is
it?
wild.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Like, and racing on it is an absolute shit show. Like,
Horrendous, right?
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
cobbles are so bad. Like on the backside, like
Super slippery.
it's like bottles are flying everywhere and chains are dropping. It's so rough. Of course, it's so rough. And on TV, it just looks like it's
Yeah. It looks, everyone's
But-
over it.
yeah,
It's the
exactly.
last stage.
Yeah.
No one's trying.
But yeah, it was a pretty special moment to finish that. And then after that, I was like, then it did another year, and just sort of realized, I kind of got to do everything I wanted to achieve in that sport.
Right.
Like I got
Got
to
the
all the
tour.
biggest races. I got to the tour. Like these were all exceptional experiences and exceptional moments in my life. And it provided me with this amazing opportunity to live in Europe, amazing opportunity to start these businesses, to find Girona, to do all these things. But then I found like, okay, I can go and do this for another 5, 6, 7 years, because I retired at 31. Or I can still keep riding my bike, but I can do all these other amazing things and learn things.
There's not enough time in the day or in the lifetime to get it done.
Yeah.
Really?
And
Yeah.
I actually I still had a year on my contract, and I asked the team to stop a year early, because I also just didn't like. It's a sport where, I understood the opportunities I had were so amazing.
Right.
And I know there'd be like so many young guys who were like so much
Totally.
chomping at the bit, and I would just be this kind of jaded guy, just cashing a check, and going to
Sure.
races, doing whatever, not being like half-hearted, but maybe not being so excited about it.
Yeah.
And I remember that guy when I was like sitting in the back of the car, just being like, "This is the greatest
Right.
thing ever."
What an
Like,
amazing,
mad you think
that whole, the picture you just painted of being there, going to Belgium, like as a kid and, being on your first team and being there. And it's really interesting that now, you started businesses, you're an entrepreneur, and then you're on your like second peak, right? Like how did you discover running?
Yeah, so that's a funny one because like, I mean, it's all kind of funny. The whole life's a bit funny, but one thing I've always been kind of proud of, I think, is that generally just kind of like having this just take whatever comes and like take opportunities. Like,
Yeah.
I think every day we're presented with a lot of opportunities to do things, right?
Yeah.
And it's about probably saying more times yes than no, you know, and just seeing what happens, you know, like to me, it's a bit more about living life in experiences, you know, and the people you meet and the things that you just have these amazing things and doors open. But like, I think a lot of times there's a lot of doors open, but we're too focused in one direction to even see that they're there.
Yeah.
You know? Or we're unwilling to just be open enough to meet people or talk to people, or like the amount of people that I've met and they're always like, oh yeah, you know, if you're ever in so-and-so, come and visit. I'm like, I don't care about, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm gonna be the guy that knocks on the door.
Don't tempt me with
you
a
know?
good time.
You
Yeah.
know? So it's always just about that. And then running was one of these things where during COVID, you know, in Spain it was like super locked down. We couldn't do much. Well, for 3 months we couldn't do anything, couldn't leave the house.
Couldn't leave the house.
No,
that must have been quite difficult for you.
Epic. Yeah,
Oh my God. The old training bike was broken every day. You imagine him in there.
Zwift is like kind of, indoor training is sort of the antichrist to me. And like, it was, I was on there every day. It was a tough moment.
Yeah, I bet it was horrendous for athletes around the world. I mean, got people going mad.
Yeah. But then when we were allowed back out, it was kind of, we could go out, but we had to stay in our township, sort of.
Yeah.
So riding was like, you can't do much.
A few laps of Girona.
And I had dabbled a bit in trail before, like just out of fun to do something as friends, but never seriously. And then just started kind of getting back into running. And then, as you do, you go down the rabbit hole. You start like YouTube, you know, Ultra Trail to Mont Blanc. Like, God, this is cool. Yeah. And then I was just like, this is epic. Yeah,
were you that naive? Were you quite naive as you went into it then? You discovered things and were like, I want to run that.
It's almost a repeat
totally.
Of your
like, I was straight back to that
cycling
kid who like found that magazine. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Did it feel good? Like, I mean, I've tried to run. I hate it.
Yeah.
No, I hate it.
Cycling legs ain't made for running, in my opinion, right? Or is that a fallacy? Is that rubbish?
I mean, it felt really cool.
But it's so hard to run when you've been gliding along on a bicycle. You can even stop pedaling and still just...
Yeah, that's
and then all of a sudden you just go... and every part of you is getting jolted. I mean, I ran... I can't claim to have run, but when I've had an injury, I've done like up to 4 or 5K, and I hated every single second of it, putting one foot in front of the other. It's the most painful, worst thing in the world. A bike, I get it. It's fun, but running is hard.
It's pretty hard.
Sorry, I haven't just put you off your latest career, I hope. Sorry, it's true, I don't like running.
Now that I think about it, that's going to suck.
You like headline, Kristen Meier retires from running.
I'll get my jacket.
No, I mean, I think a thing that was really...
God, it's hard though, compared to running.
It's really hard. But what I loved about it was when I started, is that I just really sucked at it. Like, I was so bad at running.
Yeah.
And when you've done this thing like cycling, and I still love the sport of cycling, but then it started and I was getting into it, and then it kind of came at a point where I had these other issues and I kind of fell out of love with cycling. And then I had this running thing, and it was just blossoming into this thing where I was like, I am such a beginner at this. I'm such a junior at this. This is so hard.
Was it really? You weren't, I mean,
like
when you started running, how far would you run, for instance? Does what I'm trying to get at is how much of that fitness, of that incredible engine of yours from cycling carries over to running?
The thing is, the engine carries over really well.
It does.
But the rest of it doesn't.
But getting the legs working is...
Like, obviously, like, straight away, I was doing, like, 10, 15, 20K.
Yeah.
Like, I was, like, destroyed.
Yeah.
I had every
Oh, you were? It was
hard. It took me, like... I did everything wrong.
You love a challenge, don't you?
When people say, like, oh, you know, running, make sure you really ease into it.
Yeah.
Nah, fuck that. I was a pro. And I was sort of like, you know.
You see me in the tour?
Yeah,
like, I was just there.
And then just like, boom. Nope, you're starting at the beginning. And I just was injured after injury after injury.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, I probably actually need to do this the right way. And
Well, you had to kind of slow down a bit and have a reset again at running.
Down, yeah, big time. And just like, well, I didn't really necessarily slow down so much. I just maybe let the injuries catch up. So I didn't slow down.
Just get injured less.
I just waited till the injuries subsided a bit more. But then I was doing all these different, like going uphill at the beginning, I was like fine. I was like, I could crush the uphills because I felt so strong. But running downhill, technically on the flat, I was so slow on the flat. So slow. I just didn't have the technique. I didn't have anything. Like I felt like I was sprinting the whole time and I was going so slow.
Right.
And I would watch these marathon guys and they're just like gazelles.
Yeah.
Just like cruising.
Yeah.
So like
They actually glide almost.
Yeah,
that's
it's
right.
wild.
Beautiful.
But Christian, I mean, you didn't just start running. Like you did like the Tour Mont Blanc, right? Is that like TDS?
Yeah.
And it's this ultra endurance race. It's super long. Like, tell me what is it? How is it's so long? It's like the Tour de France of ultra endurance races, right?
It's the highest. It's the biggest thing, is it, in off-road running?
Yeah. So UTMB is an actual race. So UTMB, the Ultra Mont Blanc, but there's a UTMB week.
Okay.
Right. So that's a week with a series of races. So UTMB being the biggest one, and then you have CCC. So UTMB is 171 kilometers.
Okay.
With just under 10,000 meters of climbing.
A lap of the base of Mont Blanc.
A lap of the Mont Blanc. So
around the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Which is the tallest mountain in France.
Oh
Yeah.
my.
So you go.
Imagine the footprint on it. 170, and you run 170 kilometers. That's something I wouldn't even drive in a day, really.
But the thing is, like, I also don't really understand how you kind of do it. You know? But so you go through. Starts in Chamonix. You run around. You go into Courmayeur. You go through Italy. Then you go up through Switzerland, and then you come back to Chamonix. So it goes through three countries.
Run through 3 countries
so
in a day.
it's pretty crazy.
That's insane.
But that week you also have the CCC, which is a 100K version, the OCC, which is 55K version, and then you've got the TDS, which is, and those other races, they run on the same course. The TDS is a separate race that runs on a slightly different course. It doesn't really go on the UTMB course much. And it's generally regarded as a more kind of rugged race, right? Like the UTMB or the TMB, the Tour de Mont Blanc, is a very famous hiking trail.
Okay.
Right? So you get thousands of people who hike this trail every year. So it's quite smooth, trodden.
Is it? Yeah.
I mean, it has some technical sections, but it's not really that technical. And then TDS is a little bit more rugged. It runs a different route and stuff. And it's normally 145 kilometers, but with the same amount of climbing as UTMB. So that's the one that I did last year.
How'd you get on?
I won.
He's some boy, isn't he? Of course he did.
I mean,
my God, really?
it was pretty special. It was pretty cool.
Are you a better runner than you are a cyclist then? Would that be a fair question or not?
I think that.
Have you done the Tour de France and now you're winning ultra marathons?
I think I'm maybe.
I get it.
I think I'm maybe a better runner. I mean, I don't know yet. I'm still quite new. I mean, it's been like a couple of years of racing, but
Winning the biggest things there is.
But I mean, it is interesting because like I didn't necessarily expect to win the race. I knew I could probably achieve a pretty good result. I trained with some other mates who are professionals who've had success, and like last year I trained a really lot with a good mate of mine, Scotty Hawker from New Zealand, and he's been third at UTMB and second at CCC. So training with him a lot, you start to absorb and you understand, okay, we're training all the time together. I'm comfortable training with him. Like, yeah, maybe I've got it. And we had a pretty special race because it was snowing. It was pretty extreme. So we start at midnight and then go through the night, and over the top climb was like snowstorm and stuff.
Wow.
It was pretty epic. And then they actually changed the course, and so it was a little longer in the end because they had to go around a mountain because they couldn't go over because of snow. But it was epic. It was so cool. You know, you're kind of running in the snow.
Yeah.
It was super cool. And then just had had the absolute day of my life. Like everything, just like I think back of that race, and some of it obviously is romanticized now, but I think back of that race, it was like one of the best sporting days I've had in my life.
Was
like
it?
Everything clicked, and I was just in my groove, doing my thing, and it just happened. And it's it's one of those things when the finish line at UTMB in Chamonix in sort of trail running is probably one of the most epic finish lines, right? Because there's so many people. It's downtown Chamonix.
Yeah.
And you come towards the end of the race, my wife was following me the whole race, and then like the last aid station, which is around 8 kilometers to go in Les Houches, a lot of friends and other trail runners and people came to like sort of see me come through, and it was such an emotional thing for me, like really fighting back the tears,
right.
Because it was like, I just don't know how to explain it, but it was just so cool, and to feel like all these people and like to kind of feel the love of all the people, and you're kind of in your zone and you're by yourself and you're running, which is obviously slower, and you can talk to people, like you're absorbing more directly.
Right, you're in the moment.
Yeah.
Christian,
Yeah,
the thing that this makes me think about as you're talking about this is feels like it's almost opposite to your cycling career, where in cycling, like you said, you loved being a domestique and it's such a team sport. And like here you are running, it's 100% individual, and you are the person that's winning. Like you talked about all those people coming for you. Like it's this emotional moment because like you are going for the win.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy that more?
I mean, that's a really special experience.
Yeah.
And then having everybody there in that moment, and then from Les Houches to Chamonix is like 8K, relatively flat, big stuff's behind you. And so you go through this hoosh, you have all this emotion, and then you like cross the river, and then you're just running on this path by yourself again until you get to Chamonix. And then you have like this whole moment of like reflection of like, shit, I might do this,
My God.
And then you
Which
run.
you would never get in a Tour de France.
No, because everything happened, but
right.
also everything in cycling happens so fast.
Yeah,
It's like sprinting across the line, and like cross the line, straight onto the home train, or warm down. Like,
totally.
It's like even when you win, it's like it's so intensive, and like you don't actually have the, But there, you're like running slowly along this path, and I had like about 40 minutes on the next guy. So I knew like I was pretty...
How long had you been out there at this point?
19 hours.
What? No!
It's a long day, man.
What? You've been running for 19 hours?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say 6 or 7. 19 hours!
I wish I could run
How
100
long
miles
do you
in
think
that.
it
I
takes?
had no idea, but I did not expect it to be 19 hours.
It's a long day.
19 hours of putting one foot in front of the other. No sleeping on that.
No.
You don't stop, really, apart from to
having
wee or
some
something.
snacks,
Snack.
Yeah.
You ran for 19 hours. I just can't get over it. That's my day.
It's pretty brutal.
That's my day ended there.
Well, you don't stay up for
that.
19 hours.
Oh my goodness.
But
So that gives you some indication of how emotional you might be as well, because I can't
yeah,
imagine
you're torn. I
thinking
mean,
particularly.
but you're also you're worn out and like.
Yeah.
Good
Mentally,
grief.
physically.
And then you start running into Chamonix,
19
and then like you
hours.
run down this like back street of Chamonix, and then it's really kind of interesting because the first part when you come into town, you run down Main Street. So the Main Street of Chamonix is like only pedestrian, right? So you start running down, it's just like people on the street.
Yeah.
Like you're just running through like
Random
street, right? And then like the first couple of people start to notice that it's like, oh, it's a runner, right? So the people are like, oh yeah, great. And then it's like more and more people start to realize, and the crowd builds as you get, and then you kind of get.
Yeah, they're all kind of know you're coming.
And then you get to like the part that's fenced off in the end, right? The last few hundred meters. And like you go and then you turn this left and you have like, this straight at the finish line. And there's just like thousands of people, and you're just like,
Wow.
You're running up this line like you can't believe it.
Yeah.
And then you cross, and you're just like, you can literally walk the last section and just take it in and absorb it, and then like turn around, run down, give high fives, come back, see friends. Like it's such a different
You could have had a
experience.
croissant and a coffee in the 40
Easy.
minutes lead you had on the side of the track there before you crossed the line.
Yeah, it was super emotional, and it was super like the most amazing high, and one of the most amazing things I've ever experienced.
Is it your greatest sporting achievement?
Yeah, and moment.
It is.
Definitely.
It is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you wish you'd started running earlier in your life?
No,
That's a good question.
I don't think I would, because like sometimes you would think like, oh, what if I'd started running earlier? Like maybe I could have had some success in running or whatever. But then you realize like, but everything that like has led me here right now happened for a reason. And I have all these amazing things that happen in my life that, like, I live with no regrets, you know, and I've like, to me at one point I look at it like 2 years before or 3 years before, I felt like I lost cycling. And not that I wanted to leave the sport, but I felt I was sort of, I had a cycling business that didn't work out, blah, blah, blah. I felt like I left and like I just wanted to leave that behind. And I felt like I'd really lost something in my life at that point. And then I realized after, I was like, wow, if all that like shit hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have had what is probably one of the best moments. And this wouldn't have
felt as good.
And it just, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
like,
right.
It just wouldn't have happened. Because like, if that bad thing didn't happen, I would have just like kept riding my bike. Because I enjoyed riding my bike.
Do you still ride a bike now a bit then? Or
a little bit.
You do?
But I love running. And
do you actually enjoy running as much as riding a bike then?
Yeah, big time.
You don't mind just running?
Well, yes.
I can't get my head around running compared to riding a bike. I can't.
But I think you need to.
I don't understand it. I'll be honest.
You need to go. I think one day you need to go running like where we run, like in the mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't run like you.
It's a different
It's a
experience.
slog for me. I can't run.
But also you have to understand, like when we say running, like in our long races, I mean we're pretty much hiking the uphills. You know, we have poles, and it's obviously your heart's still high.
It's insanely physical.
Pushing,
Yeah.
But like, you are walking, hiking. You're not running the whole thing.
Almost climbing, yeah.
I mean, your hiking is my probably running, but
well, that's right.
You still have to be able to hike quick, but it's a different sort of thing. But
so where do you go from here? What does the future look like?
I mean, it's really interesting because, you know, I was very fortunate off the back of that, you know, to, you know, now have a contract with Solomon. So I'm running sort of professionally for Solomon, professionally running.
God, that's mad,
which is kind of a weird, it's a weird thing because one, you know, I never imagined ever going back to, you know, being quote unquote a professional athlete.
Sure.
Which is kind of funny because it actually is no different than what I was doing before because like, last year, the years before, sport, I always still lived like an athlete just because that's what I love. That was my lifestyle. You know, that's my favorite thing. That's what I need just to feel whole or complete as a person.
Yeah.
So it's sort of just like we were talking about earlier, you are kind of just identifying yourself as something, but like nothing has really changed. But so I'm super fortunate to have that. And it's kind of an interesting thing to see what happens in the next few years because I really don't know, you know, and the interesting thing after TDS was, you know, it was this amazing moment to win, but there also came this massive depression afterwards.
Did it? For you?
Yeah. Because I was like...
Done it?
I thought like, I kind of had that moment where I thought, is this it? Like, I didn't, like, this is probably maybe one of the biggest things I could win.
Yeah.
Have I peaked? This is going to be it for me for running?
I've done it. Yeah,
like,
it's done.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have just gotten second and then, like, you know, tried again. You know, like having that sort of thing.
The carrot.
Yeah.
Did you? You battled for a bit afterwards, did you?
Yeah, a few months. I was like pretty
hard to
down.
train and stuff. And
yeah, I mean, I love training, so I would go out running. But like, you know, I kind of struggled to try to figure out what's next or like what to do or
would you drop the distance to say like 26 miles and
no.
Is that something you could do or not? Is that a different thing? That's almost like a sprint to you, right?
It's running is incredible because as cycling is quite a unique sport because all cyclists are first endurance athletes and then you become more niche-y, right? So you might be a sprinter, you might be a climber, you might be a time trialist.
Which can depend on your physical stature as well.
But basically, you all still have to get through a 150K stage or 200K stage or like a sprinter has to do a time trial. A climber has to do a sprint. So you're kind of all basically the same, specializing only in the very minute things in the sport. But in running, it's totally different. Like there's real... Like a marathon specialist, you know, is not a mountain running athlete.
Right.
No, that's right. It's a totally different.
Totally different.
I have no understanding of that. Like a runner is a runner to me to a point. If you're not a sprinter, marathon, long distance, it's all the same to me. But that's not the case.
No, definitely not. And like, you also have this thing where an ultra race, like a 100-mile race, you know, that's depending on the course, a 15 to 24 hour effort.
Right.
And so that's a massive distinction
mad.
from doing either like, a 5,000 meter on the track or a marathon or something. So it is a lot different. That's one thing that I kind of is maybe interesting for me to still try to figure out, like, because you have this idea of like, oh, maybe I should be competitive in like a 50K. But if you're really specializing in one thing, like some guys can, obviously there's always, your Killians and the outliers. But for people like me, I can be competitive, but it's not like it's much different. Like and I kind of like doing everything. So it's kind of the difficult part of like, okay, like remembering, okay, well, this is your goal. This is what you're trying to do. So let's, stay on that.
What's the feeling like on the start line on a day like that when and this is probably me personally asking, very personally, but like, I couldn't.
For a friend.
Maybe, exactly. You got 19 hours running in front of you. What is it a feeling of excitement or is it a feeling of, oh my God, this is going to suck? Like, what is it?
No, I think for me, it's always a feeling of excitement at that point.
Adventure.
Because you train a lot, and for me, the worst part is always the tapering, right? Because you do a bit of a taper and you kind of down the hours, and then you just get really excited because you just want to go and like just spend a big day out in the mountains.
How far do you run in training then, can I ask?
Kind of depends, but generally, like
you are just like
fascinated by it. I'm going down the rabbit hole. Ultra runner. No. No, but like, I mean, do you go out for like 10 hours and running?
No, you kind of can't. I mean, physically, it's a difficult sport. But like a bigger week for me can be like 23, 24 hours.
Running?
Yeah, so a lot in the mountains. That might be like 200 kilometers.
A week?
12,000 meters of climbing in that.
I've never done that on a bike in a week.
And then average is probably like 100-mile weeks, 160K.
Wow.
But, maybe we can do a little bit more cycling. We're still trying to figure out, because like, I coach myself at the moment. I'm now getting a bit of insight from a couple of people, but, I've noticed like, okay, you need to build slowly and do this. And like, the interesting thing is to be competitive at a certain level, I feel like you need to be able to do a certain amount.
Yeah.
But it takes years to be able to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
To be able to train enough to be able to train to be competitive at those, which is really interesting. Like, I've become really, really fascinated in the last couple of years just with, like the idea of human performance.
Yes, I did want to ask you about this, of just like your thoughts on training and reaching that peak performance, almost like the human limit, if you will, like what that means and how. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think you have a really interesting view on what that looks like.
Yeah, I think I've really been interested in everything like around kind of what certain groups like the Norwegian triathletes are doing, which is really interesting about how, and all of Alexander Boo, and like thinking about, they're almost thinking like, a lot of coaching is really generalized coaching, but their philosophy, like, how do we push, to the next limits of human performance beyond, they're not talking about like, okay, let's be competitive in this field. It's like, no, how can we break barriers? Like, that's kind of what they're looking at in sort of human sport physiology. And all these concepts and ideas and like, but sometimes you look at those, okay, well, those are like, different people, they've been doing that. But I think for a lot of us, it's like also what I'm interested in, what is my personal peak performance, not against, I'm not going to be Killian, I'm not going to be certain other people or certain other athletes, but what can I get out of myself? What is my maximum? And, I try to inform myself and I try to work with some of the best people possible, which maybe sometimes to me personally, I think, oh, this is maybe a bit crazy because like I am not that like, multiple time Olympic champion or what, But then I'm like, I'm so interested for my own personal sake.
Yeah,
Right.
It's
Like
the
just,
hook. That's
just
what's-
about like
Yeah.
doing it and like pushing it and seeing and like, what can I do? What can I try? And like,
You're your
how
own
mu-
experiment.
How much?
Yeah.
Yeah. How much volume
You really
can
are.
I
Yeah.
do? How much? And the interesting thing is, from the outside, sometimes it looks like I've always maybe had more, not more failures, but definitely all my achievements are built on a foundation of failure for me. Like I've failed more times than I've achieved.
Yeah.
But it's also because a lot of those times I've always had to figure things out for myself.
Right.
Because interestingly, I've also had this thing where I don't like when people tell me I can't do something. Not as a motivator, but I'm like, I feel that that's a limiter. Like, I don't want to feel limited by someone saying, okay, well, we should only do this because, you probably can't handle more. To me, it's like, nah, fuck it. Like, I'll try and see if I can do more. And then if it doesn't work,
Then we know.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
We'll pick up the pieces
but
afterwards.
you never know. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll work, So I've always been more of that try it, see what happens.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, sometimes we are kind of maybe put in a box or put in something. And then to me, it's all about dreaming.
Yeah.
It's all about like, what could I do? What could I achieve? How?
Goals. Going for goals, man.
Yeah.
But even but dreaming of these insane goals.
Yeah.
Like big ones.
But
like
they're not
things-
that insane. They're
Yeah.
a goal. So
Yeah.
you've got to, it's right. They've got to be big.
But you have to, and then try and see what happens and go for it. And then but sometimes, there's, for whatever reason, you have people telling you, well, maybe you can't do that, or we shouldn't do that, or this or that. And I always just like to absorb information of different things and then pick out, try, fail, maybe succeed, go again, see what happens. But to me, that's a lot more interesting because you learn a lot about yourself and you can just have fun and kind of go for it. And sometimes it works out and you win a big race and it's like super awesome.
Christian,
Oh my God.
this has been super, super cool. Thank you so much for coming on.
What a chat, mate. Yeah.
It's I love the trajectory of your life. I think that we all can take that, right? Like if I just try, if I just keep doing it, if I logically set these steps and follow them, then there's no reason why
not?
I can't be in the Tour de France or winning races around Mont Blanc. I don't know if that's what happens to all of us.
I'm going to
but,
sign off on those two this lifetime, but yeah.
You say that, but I mean, at the end of the day, we've all, I think a big thing is it doesn't have to be that.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like everybody's goal needs to be running UTMB, but the one thing that we can do in our lifetime is inspire someone to go and just take the step to tackle whatever that next small challenge in their life is that maybe seems enormous to them, but that might be just going for their first run, that might be for doing the first thing, but just because someone like myself has done more extreme things, there's people that have done more extreme things than me. So it's always that just taking that step and going and just having a dream and following it and enjoying your life.
Good way to live your life.
I love it. Well, I look forward to watching you race now. This is really, really cool.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks very much
been
for
awesome.
coming in, mate. That was incredible.
Awesome.